cloaking device.
Yes.
I am resident of Colorwood for YouTube. Joel Sands. It's my buddy Patrick McCray. It's my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to do the movie Dust Bowl. Very, very interesting movie. So, guys, I know when I first saw this a couple of days ago. Alan, when did you first see this movie?
4 or 5 years after it actually debuted, so sometime in the 80s, mid 80s, like 86, something like that, 85, 86.
That would be 4 years on the dot.
Yeah, because it came out in 81, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think maybe in Germany in 81. It got to Louisville in 82.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I saw it in either. I can't remember if I saw it via cable or art house. I cannot remember. It's been a long time, but I once reviewed the plot and remembered a lot from it. So
I once cut in the end of the movie into Raiders of the Lost Ark. So when the submarine pulls in, I cut to the end of Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
And I played that because they had no idea that was coming. They hated me. But it's not the worst thing I've done, but it's right up there.
The great thing about this movie is they're not really, by and large anyway, they're not really Nazis.
They're not. In fact, they're making fun of Hitler at the beginning.
Yeah. And they're pretty over the Reich, the idea of the Reich, especially the veteran guys. The younger guys, I guess there's one they make fun of who is a fervent Nazi, but other than that, everybody's kind of over it. Which I think is realistic.
I think so too.
Towards the end of the war, I think that's
there's no more existential place to spend the end of the war than to be in a doomed submarine.
Yeah. And the claustrophobia of all that too, and being, kind of trapped almost, and in some cases literally trapped.
Yeah.
Tiny.
Joel, a couple of days ago, you were talking about the claustrophobia.
Oh yeah, hell yeah! In this movie, and I'm not saying that it wasn't in. I want to be clear. There was claustrophobia in other submarine movies, but I think it's really more brought to home with this movie more so. It gives you that set because the actors do a great job of giving that sense of tightness with like having to go past each other. There was that guy going up when they sounded alarm, and it was just a test. It was just to, see how everybody would do. The guy's coming out the bathroom. He's pulling up his pants. There's like a crowd of people, like they're so squeezed together. Man, just from a visual standpoint, just from a cinematography standpoint, and I know they shot this in a studio. Really well done.
Pretty tight quarters for the actors, too.
Right.
The sets and so on that they built were pretty tight.
Yeah. And it was really well done, too.
I think you need to do that. That's an actor's tool. That's really important in a movie like this. To be, elbow to elbow with each other in certain sequences.
Here's a question to you guys. You guys both do stage stuff. Have you ever built or been part of building a stage that was very tight quarters?
I've worked in tight quarter stages, but yeah, generally that's your director will go nuts and the actors won't like it very much either. The room to move around. The closest I got was I did a play called Someone Who'll Watch Over Me, which is a play by Frank McGinnis about 3 guys in a prison in Beirut. And I did it with, I managed to give them more room than really it appeared by coming out into the audience. So I did it in 3/4 thrust, which is a way to sort of do something like Dust Boot, because then the claustrophobia is suggested. Your lighting designer will go nuts. He won't like it.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult to light a small space with big walls and so on.
Angles are very limited. Yeah, angles are extremely limited, and you can interfere with the audience when you have a live audience by shooting directly at the actors, because you're also shooting into the backs of the heads sometimes of your audience.
Yeah.
It becomes difficult.
There's much more in good design. There's much more driven by lighting than I think people know.
It is. It's absolutely true. The show I'm doing right now, lighting is hugely important to it. We've got We've got a set with a background, a proscenium, a false proscenium with a bunch of cutout holes in it with LED tape inside, and they're programmable. So we get all of these different effects coming out of these circles. It's really important. It's like being a 70s show, we can do disco effects and do all sorts of things like that. So it becomes incredibly important to have that. So it would be extremely difficult to do a stage version of Das Boot, I think. I've worked on small stages, don't get me wrong. I've worked a 3-person show with a 72-seat house. The stage was probably, the playable area of the stage is probably no more than 10 or 12 feet deep and probably no more than 30 feet wide, and that's pretty small.
Did you use levels? You know, did you use
Yeah,
verticality?
we had some platforming on that stage. It was a production that I did of a show that was written by Arthur Marx about his dad.
Oh, all right.
Called Groucho: A Life in Review, and it's sort of a play with music more than a musical, which is why I was in it. So
that's not the Frank Ferranti.
No,
that's the Frank Ferranti. Yeah.
He may have been in a production of it, but that's not the one that he's known for.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. This one has all the 3 brothers and a woman that plays all the female roles. So there's actually 4 people on stage at various times, usually only 3 at once. But we had areas on the stage. We had an area where their childhood could be displayed, a bedroom area. We had an area on the other side of the stage where they did their vaudeville routines, school days, and all of those vaudeville routines that they did. And then there was a middle place, which was kind of just a general area for doing dance routines and stuff like that. And then a small area downstage, so-called downstage, where he had his makeup table and he would talk to the audience when he was making up and so on. It was very tight. It was incredibly tight.
Cool. Some here. Production for Das Boot took 2 years, 1979 to 1981, and was the most expensive German film at the time. Most of the filming was done in 1 year to make the appearance of the actors as realistic as possible. Scenes were filmed in sequence over the course of the year. The ensured natural growth of beards and hair, increasing skin pallor, and signs of strain on the actors.
It's a great luxury for actors, shooting in sequence. It's
Tremendous.
A real luxury. It's not
this
always.
Is a very beard-driven movie.
They kind of just get more and more haggard as time goes by.
Talk to me about that, guys. What goes into that? Explain that to me.
Well, Jürgen Prochnow's character, in a sequence that was cut, it was a flashback, keeps trying to shave, and that's why his skin is so pockmarked on the submarine, because it was doing this and this and every. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, what's in that is that you film in sequence, as Alan said, and you let nature do the rest.
And the idea is, of course, if you're inside of a submarine for a long period of time, certain types of hygienes are very difficult, and shaving is one of those things that doesn't necessarily, you don't always have time for, especially in a small U-boat. This isn't a big giant nuclear submarine where there's a bit more room to, and more facility. This is a small submarine.
It's not a Los Angeles class. I know that.
No.
It's not like that movie with Denzel and Gene Hackman in it.
No, that's a full
Crimson Tide
submarine. Yeah.
Or Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Yeah, which is the
most realistic submarine movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Just trying to get Peter Lorre into this ship would be a real effort. I mean, they'd have to.
But you know that it's a large vessel, right? Not only his physical presence, but his enormous ego at that time.
They would insist on doing the same with Barbara Eden, even though she didn't need it.
Well,
yeah,
she'd get a full 50 sailor escort. So
I'm sure.
Alan, you and Patrick talked about lighting, and in this movie, I know it's done at a studio.
Mhm.
but the way they made the waves of the water and the rough weather looked legit. I mean,
Oh,
is that
special
just
effects are fantastic.
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah. To make that sort of thing look natural takes a combination of practical effects, and because it wasn't done with CGI, obviously this is
Right.
pre-CGI and all that. So it's practical effects, which means they were actually done. The practical effects combined with the lighting is what you need to have, obviously. And I'm not sure how.
Handling the lighting with underwater and murky underwater,
Uh-huh.
that's a huge challenge.
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely a technical challenge. That was probably one of the reasons why it was the most expensive movie up to that time.
Yeah.
Was doing that sort of
When
work.
it was talked about, the special effects were discussed a lot, and they really are very good.
Yeah. This in a weird way, it reminds me of a little bit of the movie Castaway. And not the plot, mind you, but how Tom Hanks had to go through his body change and stuff and what they had to film. With this, I like everything they do because it's nothing looks phony, nothing looks fake about this. And even though, like, when I read it was filmed on a studio on a studio, I was a bit shocked because the water looked legitimately like an ocean. Like,
Mhm.
and
Well, I
I
mean,
like
the exterior shots,
They
I'm
could have.
sure,
They could
were
have. Some of them
reals.
were probably made, yes,
yeah, yeah,
in order to help with that. The close-ups dealing with water and so on would have been done in the studio tank, probably.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure they had some exterior shots. It makes sense that they would.
I like how they almost run into one of their own submarines. Like they almost collide with one of their own.
Oops.
Um, yeah, which is really, really interesting. What did you guys think of that? Because the captain gets very frustrated at that. What did you guys think of that scene?
I think it kind of humanizes the aspect of war that is chaos and is mistake, because there's a lot of chaos and mistakes made in war. It's not the glorious charge, all the time. As a matter of fact, it rarely is. It's mostly holy crap, let's survive this. Whoops, got through that okay. Boom, didn't get through that okay. A lot of
I
chaos.
I had a thought, related to this great monologue that Jurgen Prochnow has that he just portrays wonderfully, and it's the monologue that he has about having also served on a sailing ship at one point, and I said, inside it was like a cathedral,
Yeah.
and comparatively, and that was so well timed because up to that point, I'm thinking, God, what a horrible fate these guys have, to be in this thing and to not be able to go anywhere. I kept thinking, God, they're in this death trap. Why didn't we just wait for the technology to get to a point where we could build these things safely, et
Mhm.
cetera, more safer at least.
Yes.
And then Prochnow has that monologue, and he talks about, there are only two ships that really have the most beautiful lines. And he said one of them was the sailing ship he was on, and the other one was the U-boat. And that reoriented my whole thinking about it because, suddenly I really appreciated what a marvel of engineering, given the time in which they took place,
Oh yeah.
that these things really were.
Mhm.
And so it plays that ambiguity, I think, extremely well.
Yes. I mean, the modern efficiency type of U-boat, submarine, or whatever wasn't that old at this time. I mean, yes, they had cranked up submarines even in colonial times in the United States, but they were pretty darn primitive. They were just
Yes.
single person things designed to maybe drill a hole into a ship and sink it or something,
Yeah.
but that was it. So we're talking about a technology that's probably really still in its adolescence at this point. And they did some amazing things with them. I mean, the Wolf Pack was a serious, it had a serious impact on the war.
Yeah.
Especially in places like the North Sea. I mean, it was but also, the Mediterranean, etc. And even in the Atlantic. My father was stationed in on the east coast of the United States, southeastern coast of the United States back in 1946, and they had just finished a sweep for U-boats and had found several of them and taken POWs. So they were all the way to, within reach of the east coast of the United States at the end of the war, basically. So at the end of the war.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, they were pretty amazing. The Japanese had it even worse, of course. I think their submarines were like 1 and 2 man. They were little tiny submarines, basically.
Unbelievable.
To again, try to compromise the hull of a boat or something like that. So.
They can evade Godzilla better, also.
Oh yes, smaller you are, the less likely you are to be noticed by the great lizard.
Well, they get those Peanut Sisters in there, and you can fit a lot of those in there.
Oh
Let's
yeah,
face it.
absolutely.
Well, the boats in World War II for Japan also had kamikaze missiles, where the guy inside,
They did sort of kamikaze with not U-boats, but their submarines as well.
Yeah. Now they did not. When you look into the history of the USS Indianapolis, they did not use their suicide torpedo. They used 2 regular torpedoes.
Regular torpedoes, yeah.
Yeah. Because that's something that got talked about in the history of it is you're supposed to swerve your boat to avoid suicide missiles because it's supposed to help somehow. So, which is crazy. For this movie here, we do get some action. We get some good action, not just inside the submarine, but outside it as well. They do sink some boats here. Really cool explosion effects, obviously. One of my favorite scenes, guys, is where they're oiling up the missiles to slide them in. What did you
Joel, you enjoyed that.
What
did you guys think?
Well, I mean, obviously that had a practical purpose. Makes it less painful. No.
That's right. Oiling the missile.
I think probably in the case of the U-boat, it probably made it less likely to spark or ignite or anything like that. So
well, yeah, they kept their torpedo tubes flooded most of the time, and as opposed to the Americans who kept them, not flooded, and at least I don't know, maybe they did at this point, but I know the later submarines, the nuclear subs, and maybe before, they were electronically powered, the torpedoes, and they were pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, that's why a lot of times in actual footage that you see that's used in films where they're shooting torpedoes, there's bubbles because they don't have to totally flood those compartments in order to shoot.
Well, they also had on loan from the Germans Lawrence Welk.
Oh,
and the bubbles were required.
And a 1 and a 2.
That's right. Fire and a 1, fire and a 2.
Yes. I always wondered where that dude came from. Just kind of popped up in American culture. Just thought he had in his closet or
Nazi.
Apparently, the story goes, I guess he was born in Wisconsin, but I'm not sure I believe that. So.
Really? Born in Wisconsin, huh?
Yeah.
They all have that accent there. It's all that cheese.
That's right. That's right. That's what they do when they milk the cows, and the 1 and the 2.
And then a 2. That's the utter truth.
That's the utter truth. That is. Or it might be a sack of lies. I'm not sure. So.
But they sort of treated the war correspondent, at least some of the men treated him very differently. 1-3, a oily, greasy shirt on his face. What did you guys make of it?
Yeah. I mean, they're rednecks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a
They're-
non-combatant. He's there for other purposes. He's not a roughneck or a redneck or any of that sort of thing. So he's going to be a lot of times.
Discipline
Yeah.
had to be really hard on the ship or on the boat because every man is absolutely vital to the operations all the time.
Yes.
So you can't really send someone to the brig, except I guess in the most extreme circumstances. And when none of them would answer that they had thrown the oily rag or whatever it was, I kind of saw in the face of the officer who had to deal with it, it's incredible frustration because it's like I can't do anything.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, because he's got to keep these guys running as one unit.
Ship's
Really.
got to run.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you lose one hand, you risk the entire ship and everyone aboard.
And they knew it.
Mm-hmm.
These guys knew it.
Yes, they did. I also think I like how when they're not sleeping, they're sometimes either playing games or telling stories. I like that part of the movie too. I also like where they say the ship is sinking, and the war correspondent, he just figures it's over. He figures he's not going to wake up. He just goes to sleep.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really, really gritty. What did you guys think?
Again, he's not a warrior, so his reaction to that's going to be different. And I mean, some people would go berserk in a situation where they thought it was over. Other people, it's like, I can't deal. I'm going to go to sleep and see if I wake up.
Well, and it gets him out of the way of other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. If he's bunked, he's out of the way, or he's off in the corner somewhere. He's out of the way. So
yeah,
which he needs to be in a situation like that because he's not.
Yeah.
He's not an engineer or somebody that's working something critical to the ship, that sort of thing. So
here's some fun stuff for you guys. Several different sets were used. 2 full-size mock-ups of a Type VIIC boat were built. One representing the portion above water for use in outdoor scenes, and the other, a cylindrical tube on a motion mount, hydraulic gimbal for the interior scenes. The mock-ups were built according to boat plans from Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry.
I told you about that. That's where you can tour the U-boat.
Yeah, you were saying about that.
The U-boat, the one that was used in interior, was gimbaled so that they could make it move in all directions, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Again, a real treat for the actors.
Yeah.
Because they just react normally.
Right. Exactly. Especially the first time they get in there. They've never done it before. Hopefully that's what the director did. Just said, we're not going to put you through this. We're not going to rehearse you in this darn thing. That would be.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was interesting that you would have never seen on an American boat is all of the plates and mugs and effluvia that was always crashing as people were running through the submarine. American boat would never have had that. They would have been far more efficient with where they stored all of that stuff. So that
everything, and it probably would have all been, or most of it would have been metal, so that it wouldn't break.
Metal and locked up, or
plastic,
maybe even magnetic. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
don't know how they do that, but
the outdoor mock-up was basically a shell propelled with a small engine and stationed in La Rochelle, France, and has a history of its own.
Yeah,
One One morning, the production crew walked out to where they kept it afloat and found it missing. That's interesting. Someone had forgotten to inform the crew that an American filmmaker had rented the boat. That's hilarious. For his own film shooting in the area. This filmmaker was Steven Spielberg.
That would have been Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing about La Rochelle is a lot of there's several key scenes that actually take place in La Rochelle in it, so that makes sense that they would have it there. So.
Yeah, I think what the is the dinners is the scene where they come aboard initially, where they try to switch out the one guy. Is that filmed in La Rochelle?
I think so. I think so. It's definitely it's occupied France.
Yeah,
I believe is what we're dealing with here, and there are several scenes where they're out of the boat and they're at port at La Rochelle. So.
Speaking about, what did you guys think of when they were out of the boat, looking above, not using the periscope, but using going outside and looking through the rough weather and trying to locate things? What did you guys think of that?
I mean, it's realistic. It's something that they would do under certain circumstances, particularly low visibility. They might be.
It makes me admire what the captain's able to pull off when the captain spots something.
Yeah.
Especially when they have to dive for the depth charges. It's coming right at them, and that rough weather's still going.
Yeah, depth charges and guns on destroyers in particular, they actually had ships in the Allies that they called U-boat killers. So that's what they were. They were hunters. And if you want to see some of that, watch Greyhound, which is the movie with Tom Hanks. That's about a U-boat hunter and how the U-boat's hunting them at the same time, basically. So that's the main way of killing a U-boat, so to speak, was to breach them with depth charges or with gunfire, large gunfire.
Yeah. Sorry. What's you guys' favorite scene in this movie? Alan?
I always thought that the ending was pretty impactful and ironic.
Oh my God.
In a lot of ways.
Sure.
That was the thing that stayed with me for the longest time and was most vivid, I think, is the irony and the heartbreaking violence of the ending. They make it and then they don't, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Patrick?
Oh, I think that scene I was talking about earlier with Jurgen Prochnow and the reporter up on the conning deck, where he's just talking about it's one of the few positive moments in the movie. This is an oppressively sad film, especially if you've seen it before, because you know that they're all fated to die.
Right,
and
but it's also like they're on this. It's like they're exhausted all the time. You know, they're stressed all the time, and like you said, it's a depressing kind of.
Just the lack of vitamin D alone. Seriously,
yeah,
I mean, that's a real problem.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah. Yep.
My favorite scene in this movie, because there's a lot of good scenes in this, is just how when the ship is sinking, the men do not stop. The men who are trying to fix the leak. It shows that determination to the will to live.
Yeah, and courage under fire. I mean, they concentrate and they get, they do the tasks that they're assigned to try to save themselves and their crewmates.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a pretty intense, memorable scene as well.
I have no questions about this movie. I enjoyed watching it.
Film.
I give it a
It's a
solid.
fantastic film. It was like a film of the decade when it came out.
Yeah.
I mean, it just was.
It really was.
Mhm.
And talked about constantly
Mhm.
for a long time. There is a mini series that I think ran more than one season based on this.
Yes, I heard of it. I have not seen it yet. And wonder
Uh,
is it
uh,
available?
yeah, I don't know. I own it.
Okay.
I bought it on iTunes years ago.
Mhm.
So and it's
Well,
good.
that means it's available somewhere. So
Yeah.
it's still on iTunes.
What do you? Oh, you already answered. Is there anything you guys want to add about the movie? Before we go?
It's a
Go
really
see it if you haven't.
yeah. It's not it's not your John Wayne war movie.
No.
It's really gritty. It shows a great spectrum of human condition and behavior and response and so on during wartime. It's unvarnished in a lot of ways. It's a great film. It's not just a war movie, but it is. I mean, that's the primary milieu of it, of course. But it's just a very human experience.
This is a weird
The human
question.
experience is just beginning.
Yeah.
This is going to be a weird question to leave this with. But what's your favorite war movie?
Big Red One.
Yeah.
For me.
Nope.
That's pretty darn good. I would have to say that my favorite war movie isn't even a movie; it's a miniseries or maxi series, actually, and it's Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
Jewel, how about you?
The director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven is a lot better than the theatrical version. Really, really good. Ridley Scott shot that film beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a
Well,
sucker.
if we're going back like that, I'd say Last Samurai really has a lot to recommend it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't. But yeah, Last Samurai's. Yeah. There's just a lot of great war movies you can go watch. I'd say like if I'd go like World War One or World War Two, obviously Patton is one of my all-time favorites.
It's a great movie. It's a really good movie.
That, and I knew my grandfather had served as a tank driver in World War II. So,
You know, a lot of the footage in Patton, or some of the footage in Patton, the actual war footage, was shot by Russ Meyer, who had been assigned to Patton as a photographer.
Yeah.
I wonder if he angled for credit and some money.
I don't know. I think that was all property of the U.S. military.
Property of the U.S. government, yeah.
But the bragging rights, certainly, he stayed tight with his World War II buddies.
That's cool.
I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stalag 17 is a great film.
I love that movie. God.
I mean, that's one we got to cover for sure. There's going to be a lot of links, obviously to Alan Gallant's YouTube channel, Colin Sport After Dark, link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Day Book Unbound. There's also going to be a link to hold on, I want to make sure I get this right. The U.S. Naval Institute there's an article about this movie. You guys, if you guys want to go read it, it'll be in the description box.
Yeah.
And a link to the movie will be in the description box. Go check this movie out. It's really
outstanding.
2 thumbs up.
Guys, I will see you tomorrow for the Stuntman.
I'm looking forward to it.
I believe that's what we said. Yes, tomorrow night.
Yes.
Should be just getting home from the second show of the day. Perfect.
All right, I'll see you then.
Make sure you impress the leading lady, just like in the Stuntman.
Oh Lord! All right, good night.
God.